Okay, I think we have enough quorum. Good evening again, and thank you for making the time. It is now 6:36. We'll be taking about an hour in this conversation. So Stacy on the call? Stacy, please go ahead. If we can just mute so that Stacy can be audible. Nancy. Okay, thank you. All right. Stacy, please go ahead.
Stacy, you're muted.
Stacy, you're on mute.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I hope you are well. So welcome to today's webinar, which is on striking a balance between parents and children. And we are really delighted to have you join us for what promises to be an insightful discussion. So one of the greatest challenges that parents face is finding the right balance between guiding their children and allowing them the freedom to explore, learn, and also grow on their own terms. And because we all want for the best for our kids, it is very important to recognize that our expectations are shaped by our experiences growing up, and life in general may not always align with what's best for them in today's world. So, in this session, we are going to explore how to manage these expectations, nurture our children's unique abilities, and encourage an environment in which they can thrive emotionally, socially, and intellectually. So, we're going to discuss strategies, share personal experiences, and offer tips on how to create a harmonious relationship which will encourage independence and also help us to strike a good balance between parents and the children. We hope to have an engaging session. You are welcome to share your thoughts and also take away some valuable insights that you can apply in your parenting journey. Other than that, I'll be posting the community link to our WhatsApp community, which is Empower with Kenya. And we welcome you to interact with us there. I'll be sharing some questions. And yes, welcome all. Over to you, Nora. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Stacy is the girl who makes it happen in EmpowerWiz. She's actually from a dentist appointment. So she's making quite an effort, and I really want to appreciate the work that Stacy does for EmpowerWiz. So today we're going to be talking, just as she has introduced the topic, how do we strike a balance, as parents? And for those of us who grew up in my era, how many of you have compared notes and all your parents used to be number one? Put your hand up. You know those parents who tell you, I was an A student. I don't know why you're getting B's. Maths was my best subject. Yeah? Thank you, Sylvia. And I spoke very good English. In fact, my compositions used to be read by the teacher. I don't understand what are these things you're writing. In my era, and my dad happened to be a teacher, God rest his soul in peace. So of course we had to be the A students because he was a teacher and he brought us more than enough teaching material. And how many of us today are parenting from that place where I remember my parents telling me they used to be top students and I was a top student. So as my child, you also have to be a top student. So you find yourself creating very unrealistic expectations for your child because of where or how you were parented. Yeah? And today our discussion is about how can we strike a balance between what we would call unrealistic expectations and move towards a place where we set realistic expectations, we support our children, and somehow our children are able to thrive and not exactly become what we want them to be, but become the best versions of themselves. And just as I say that, I realize that at Empowerwiz we give every child a voice, and what we are trying to do in this conversation, which we have every last Thursday of the month, is to have a conversation as parents towards a community where children are they thrive, they're empowered, and they're given a voice. And by voice, I don't mean that, the children speak, but actually they are heard, they are considered, and we are in a space where everything we're doing is not only from our perspective, but we are also cognizant of what the child experience is. And in that process, then as parents, we foster an environment where the child is the best version of themselves. So we are on Instagram, we are on Facebook, we are on YouTube. So when you get time, please do have a look on some of the past webinars if this one is your first. For those who are coming back, thank you so much for coming. I can see quite a few, and I'm really happy to see even the new people. So karibuni sana. Just to explore this topic, as I mentioned, a lot of parents, a lot of us parents, and I have 4 children, we struggle with just basically creating unrealistic expectations. Sometimes these unrealistic expectations are communicated to the child. For example, when you tell them that I was an A student and I don't expect anything less. Yeah. Some of us have even gone to the extent of not being honest. Because I remember one child asking, Mommy, how come all the parents used to top their class? Like, how come there are no parents who say, I was at the bottom of my class, and maybe what I would want is for you not to be at the bottom. How can I support you? Yeah. So as parents, how many of us are out here creating unrealistic expectations and pushing our children? You have a footballer, you have an artist, you have a musician, but you insist that this child should have an A in math, an A in Kiswahili, an A in English. In fact, sometimes we even want an A in French. And all this then overwhelms the child, and they start to wonder, is there a problem with me? So what we are here to talk about today is how do we encourage and work towards setting realistic expectations, and at the same time walk the journey with our children in achieving their dreams, instead of us either projecting our dreams or unfulfilled dreams. You know, those people who say, I wanted to be a doctor and my parents could not afford school fees, so I'm paying for you school fees in the best school, you better be a doctor. Like, this family must get a doctor. If I didn't become a doctor, you have to become a doctor. Or I was a teacher and I expect you to also make the best teacher. Instead, let us say things like, what do you want to become? What solution do you want to offer the world? And then in that process, see what support the child needs. If they're an artist, buy them crayons, buy them, craft books, take them to art exhibitions, show them on the internet what other artists are doing. Yeah. So that we're not in this space where we're just pushing our children and we're really becoming unrealistic and overlooking our children's talents and interests. Stacy, I would like us to just explore the questions that are really going to get us thinking about this topic. So I don't know, Stacy, if you're ready to post the questions, and I can, I just wanted to also quickly talk about, okay, she has posted the link to the WhatsApp community. If it's okay with you, please join the community so that you can view the questions. Otherwise, I will also be reading them out loud and we will explore each of them. Where there is no balance between parents and children, there's a lot of criticism, there's very low confidence, low self-esteem, there is overpraising of parents, and like I said earlier, unrealistic expectations. There is also fixation on small details and on what goes wrong rather than what goes right. And this is where you find, as parents, we have not been able to strike a balance between what we want, who we are, and who our children can really be versus what we want them to be. So I'm just saying that is what, where there's no balance, that's what it looks like, where the child is not confident, they have low self-esteem, their grades are, going backwards. And there's also usually in such an environment a lot of comparisons, either between a parent or between siblings. Some parents even take the time to make fun of the other spouse and say, usikwe mjinga kama mama yako, she used to be number last. Me, I was the top of my class, and I know you have my genes. Yeah. So all these things sometimes which we think are going to motivate a child end up being really downers in terms of the child's progress. And also there's a lot of focus on stellar results instead of focus on progress. Like if a child has a D, we need to probably look at how do we get them from a D to a C. But instead you find a parent saying, I only want A's in this house. So that's where there's no balance looks like. So I'm going to take a pause there, and I'll just request that you click on the link for the EmpowerWiz community so that you can access the questions. I will otherwise read them and just have us think through. I also would like, if it's okay with you, you can raise your hand and answer the question, and then we can just explore where most of us are. The first question is, how often do you find yourself expecting your child to excel in the areas where you excelled as a child? So I gave the example of those who are A students in math, all the way from kindergarten, all the way to high school. They'll even tell you, I studied statistics, and I did my master's in pure math. So I expect you as my child to have all A's. How often do you find yourself? So there's always, often, sometimes, rarely, or never. I'll start. For me, sometimes. Because I've been in those situations where I wondered, why my child wasn't doing well in something I was doing. So for me, it's sometimes. So you can also type in the chat your answers just so we can have a look at them and talk about how we feel as a group. Or you can raise your hand and say something about how often you find yourself expecting your child to excel in the areas where you excelled as a child. So you can raise your hand up and say something. Thank you, Moses. Sometimes. So Moses and I, we sometimes find ourselves expecting our children to excel in the areas we excelled as children. I remember writing great compositions, and I always remember telling my children about this story, how when the English compositions were being given back, the teacher didn't give me mine, and I wondered if my paper was missing. And then the teacher held up the paper and started reading, and when he started, I knew that was my composition. And it borders on telling your child how well you did, bragging, setting unrealistic expectations. So how do we strike a balance in sharing our experiences without belittling our child's results or journey, motivating them at the same time, and not invalidating their own experience? Because if your child got a 2 out of 30 in composition, and then you show up with a story like mine, how does that make the child feel? Thank you, Janet. Often. That is very true. Often. Anyone else? So we have 2 sometimes and 1 often. Amy, how often do you expect Marcel and Kyra to excel in what you used to excel? Is it often? Is it always? Is it rarely? Is it never? Okay. So for those who are just joining, or the answers are on WhatsApp, Okay, Stacy, could you please read for us some of the answers? Thank you very much. Thank you, Amy. Often. Wow, okay. So we have sometimes and often. We have three sometimes. Thank you, Richard. Stacy, could you please read the answers on the WhatsApp?
On WhatsApp, we have two, sorry, but three responses. One has said often, and two have said sometimes.
Good. So I think what I'm hearing is amongst the 5 or 6 of us who've answered, and I'm hearing most of us are at sometimes and often. Maybe there's one of us or two of us who is at always, and you might not even know the answer to this question, and you might need to intentionally check how you evaluate your child's progress. Do you find yourself saying, how did you get a B in biology? Biology was my best subject. In fact, I can tell you, some of the things that I was taught in high school biology, yet I'm about 50 years old. So that would show that what your expectation is in terms of your child excelling in that particular subject. So I think these questions are just supposed to be thought-provoking. You don't necessarily have to have the answer today, but it allows us an opportunity as we move forward in the interactions with our children that we ask ourselves these questions. Because as you're reviewing their progress, you're wondering, am I saying they should do well in math because I did well? Do I really believe that this child is great in math, or am I just pushing my agenda? Or is it an unfulfilled dream that I had that I excel in math? Or am I even going out of my way to lie that I was an A student in math or English just so that my child matches that? The other question is, do you believe your expectations of your child are influenced by your own childhood experiences? So do you strongly agree? Do you agree? Are you neutral? Do you disagree? Or do you strongly disagree? Let's just have the same exercise. If possible, you can put them on WhatsApp, Stacy, when they're ready. Just let me know, then you can read them. But we can also have those who haven't clicked. Stacy, you can repost the community link for the new members who've just joined. But the question we're exploring now is, do you believe your expectations of your child are influenced by your own childhood experience? My experience as a child was because my father was a teacher. He always came home with these charts and everything, and he was always teaching and always emphasizing how we needed to excel as watoto wa mwalimu, because we had extra resources. And of course, he also said that we should not embarrass him because we are the teacher's children. So how does that experience shape how I have raised my children? I have to admit, it's usually at the back of my mind. And I always, when I've done my this online test, it shows that I can make a good teacher. So I'm always tempted to teach my children and to also expect that they're going to excel just the same way my dad expected us to excel. Actually, I have to applaud my mom. I think my mom was more realistic, if I have to remember. My mom has always been more realistic in terms of how she allows you to do the best that you can, as opposed to the pressure that my dad put on us, being that he was a teacher. So I remember being about maybe 7 years old, and I could barely speak English, but my father brought home this tongue twisters. This if can't I tie a tie, why can't I tie a tie as can't I? If can't I tie a tie, why can't I tie a tie as can't I tie a tie? Or the red lorry rolling down, those tongue twisters. And we would be practicing these all day long because he wanted to go and show us off to his friends or the other teachers and say, my child can do that tongue twister very easily, not knowing that we had spent so much time practicing. So how many of you believe your expectations of your child are influenced by your own childhood experiences? Do you agree? Do you strongly agree? Are you neutral? Do you disagree or strongly disagree? So let's just see your answers in the chat so we can discuss that. Stacy, maybe you can read the ones on WhatsApp. Let's have guys post them. If you're not on the WhatsApp or you've not opted to click on the link, please do post your answer on the chat. And in that case, Stacy, because I don't see much on the chat, please, you can go ahead and read the answers in the WhatsApp. Stacy? So the question is, do you believe your expectations of your child are influenced by your own childhood experiences? Do you strongly agree, or are you neutral, or do you disagree or strongly disagree? You agree, Moses. Thank you very much. I also agree, and that's why I was backing it up with that story. Oh, you disagree, Moses. Okay, that's good. Okay, maybe you can take a minute and explain to us. Susan, just like me and Janet, we agree. Moses, I'd like to hear your view, because I think as we are parenting from a blind view. Thank you, Amy. Amy, myself, Janet, and Susan, we agree. Moses, I'd like to give you a minute to just explain to us. You disagree on this. Do you believe your expectations of your child are influenced by your own childhood experiences? Moses, if you have a minute, please share with us. Moses Quach.
Hi, Nora.
Hi, Moses.
You can hear me.
Yes.
I think perhaps maybe I've not seen that coming out clearly.
Mm-hmm.
At least from the children that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm yet to see that.
So Moses, what you're saying is, you're not, maybe what you're saying is, I'm not parenting expecting my child to do certain things in certain ways based on my childhood experiences. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I just want them to have their own experiences. Maybe as I grow them to build up on their interests. I don't really want to influence them to do things the way I used to do or how I should be.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to guide them to do what they want to achieve, so long as it interests them.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
now, I wouldn't want to influence them to be a banker,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a banker.
Mm-hmm.
If they like, I have one that likes football,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really training him along those sides, taking him to the football academy. So that's what I mean. My own experience, and I don't want to impose them on them.
Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you, Moses, because you know what? That's our goal. We want to allow our children, and I think for most of us who've heard from our children that, what do you want to do, footballer? Sometimes we're like, footballer. You don't want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a banker. You're just like, you even express your shock, and the child is like, they even go ahead to explain to you that Messi is actually doing very well as a footballer. You don't want me to be Messi? And you're like, hey, footballer. So Moses, I really want to applaud you, for being deliberate and intentional and actually allowing your children to have their own experiences aside from the experience that you had as a child. So well done. And that is the goal for all of us. So I think now that our children are all teenagers and above, we're very deliberate, but I feel like we could have done better when they were younger. But nevertheless, it's never too late. So we will keep trying not to parent our children influenced by our own childhood experiences. And it really has to be something you gotta think twice about. So when you have a situation, your child comes home, they're really excited about something they have drawn in the art class, and your first instinct is, did you not do math and all you've been doing is kuchora chora in school? So take a minute and say, oh, let's have a look at that. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, I like it. Tell me more about this drawing. And that way you allow yourself to appreciate your child's experience, because to be honest, the chances and opportunities we had, even the teachers we had, were different. So we really need to allow our children to also experience their childhood from where they are today, not influenced by our own childhood experiences. So as much as it's inbuilt in us, we can just be a bit deliberate. So I'm going to go to the third question. How do you handle situations where your child's strengths and interests differ from your own as a child? And I like Moses' example where he says he's been taking them to the football academy because they're interested in football, whereas maybe all the football he got was the neighborhood football, but now he's paying for them to go and play football. So how do you handle these situations where your child's strengths and interests differ from your own as a child, where you find a child will come home and say, I hate math, I hate science, and you're thinking to yourself, but I loved math and I loved science, and you are my child. So let's have your answers in the chat or in the group. How do you handle situations where your child's strengths and interests differ from your own as a child? If there's anyone who would like to raise their hand and say something, this is a good opportunity to share your experience on how you handle these situations where you find your child is a footballer and you are this child who was getting all A's in class, best in math, best in science, best in biology, best in chemistry, and your child is actually here getting B's, C's, and D's, but the football coach keeps calling you and saying your child is the best footballer that we have. How do you handle this situation? Stacy, you can let me know if there are any answers. I'm also looking in the chat. Also, you can raise your hand and say something. Thank you, Nancy. She says, I had to reparent myself. Nancy, do you mind telling us a bit more about that? It was definitely a hard one. Okay. Encourage them in their own path. Thank you, Amy. Nancy, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I can, and I don't know how to raise my hand.
That's fine. Just go ahead.
Okay. So this was a really hard one. Like you said, I looked at my kids even when they were young. We are both in IT, very analytical. Mm-hmm. So I was looking at my kids that they're going to be analytical, mm-hmm. and I convinced myself, even genetically, genetically they will be, Yeah. So this was really hard. And as they are growing, I'm seeing the things they love history and just the natural progression mm-hmm. For them. That's the easy things that come for them. History. One of them is very artistic. Mm-hmm. And one time, and this is really bad, and I've reparented myself, but I'll share this. Mm-hmm. When she was in third grade, her art won to be in one of the walls, and then it was moved to the library. Mm-hmm. But it didn't even faze me. And I look back after doing my own work and reparenting myself, I'm like, I missed that opportunity mm-hmm. because I was so mm-hmm. geared into them being, like I was trying to raise mini-me's, basically. Mm-hmm. But wow. But as time was going, they got into middle school. That's when I realized these are not me. These are their own people, mm-hmm. and I had to redo myself. And like the person who spoke before, like they can be successful if they're doing something that comes natural to them. Mm-hmm. These are things that I had to work on myself mm-hmm. in order, to parent them. I had to reparent myself, mm-hmm. And my way of thinking. Mm-hmm. But it's still hard. Sometimes I look at them, if you do engineering or IT, I'll get you a job. You'll be, those thoughts still come, but I have to reparent them. So thank you.
Wow, thank you, Nancy. That is such a powerful story. Imagine now, I don't know, you might have even apologized already. This child won. And as a parent, you're sitting there thinking, we don't need artwork winning. We need We need to be the IT people we are, and I know you have that gene. And so I really like the experience you've shared. And what I like most about what you've said is you've had to reparent yourself, because most of us went through these experiences where our parents got frustrated, like the example of my father, who was a teacher, and he could not handle any of us getting a B or a C or not being number one. Yeah. And a lot of these moments are going to be situations where you really have to make a decision as a parent to reparent yourself and do the inner work and say, why am I behaving the way I'm behaving? Why am I not celebrating my child when they are winning? And you can tell this for the moon. They're really happy they've won this. They want to join an art competition. They want to go for a football. Oh, thank you, Janet. Yes. So I like that, and I want to really underline that. Most of us actually need to reparent ourselves. And the other way to put it is to be deliberate and intentional parents, where we keep checking ourselves. And if you feel that maybe a lot of these things are in your blind view, please take a minute to check even with the people close to you and say, I'm having an issue with my son. He has not been doing well in math, but he keeps bringing home these swimming awards and football awards, and I'm really frustrated because I expect him to do better in class, but instead he's bringing me the medals he's winning in football or in swimming or in tennis or in art or in music. They keep saying they want to learn the piano. And that's what these conversations are about. They're about creating awareness on how we are parenting our kids and how maybe we need to reparent ourselves. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences. If you'll allow me, unless someone else has something to say, I'd like, Stacy, maybe you can read the answers in the WhatsApp group. Yes, Nancy, my kids are partly me and partly their dad. Two different people with different thoughts. And I mean, you're so right. Because do we often maybe even say the mixture of the two genes might not exactly produce a pure mom and a pure dad? And be fair to our children and listen and say, I didn't grow up when there was, internet. I didn't grow up when there was football academies. I didn't grow up when people studied music, pure music. So maybe I can reparent myself and say, let me leverage on the opportunities that are available today and give my child a chance to excel in something they love. I will move to the next question. Stacy, do you have any answers you wanted to read?
On WhatsApp, we have three who have said they would encourage them to pursue their own path. And one response about trying to guide them towards the things that you enjoyed.
Wow, I like that. And all of this we get through interacting with our children, looking at what their interests are, talking to them, talking to their teachers, and guiding them around the things they love, not the things we love. But if let's say you're a good, you're an artist, like you did a lot of artwork when you were a child, and you see your child doing the artwork and they actually love it, there is no issue with you sharing your experiences and saying, oh, I was in an art competition and I won and this is what I did. Or your child is interested in math and you are interested in math. I think what we're saying is, let's learn to guide our children in what they love doing and what they can excel, or basically try to extract what is it that our kids love, instead of being shocked that they don't love the same things we love, yet they're in a different era. So I'll just, in view of time, I'll go to the next question. Do you feel pressure to set the same high standards for your child that your parents set for you? Honestly, I do feel the pressure, and I've had to do that sort of reparenting myself and realizing that especially now that our kids are teenagers, I've had to recheck myself a lot, and the discussions we have with their dad are always around, what is this child really saying? What do they want to do? And yes, we've had to give up some of the standards, high standards that we had set. So how many of you feel that pressure to set the same high standards that your parents set for you? How many of you are parenting the way you were parented and happy to do it? Saying, in my family, we were all A students and you guys will be nothing less. How many of us feel that pressure to set the same high standards or higher? There's nothing wrong with high standards. There's nothing wrong with high standards. It's just that, how are you parenting from the place where you were parented? Sometimes it's even how you're exerting that pressure. Are we criticizing our children and making them less confident by telling them the standards for this family are higher than what you're achieving and I expect more from you? So let's see in the chat, do you feel pressure to set the same high standards for your child? Kevo, help me view the chat. I think there's some comments there that I missed. I had to remind myself, encourage them on their own path. It was hard when my son told me that he wants to be a garbage truck driver. Like some of us here, I had to reparent myself. Thank you. And then Nancy says, my kids are partly me and partly their dad. Two different people with two different strengths and weaknesses. Every day I try to make peace with what I had dreamt they would be and embrace and support what they are. Thank you so much for those powerful comments. And I really think that I find this so inspiring, because it's also allowing those of us who are not doing these things to go back and say, how can I parent my child differently? Because to be honest, we don't every day get people who do a report card on how we parent our children. You might have a good teacher every so often who will call you out and say, your child does not feel supported in what they're doing, and that teacher then gives you the opportunity to be a better parent. But I think for most of us parents, we parent from a place of, I know what I am doing. Thank you, Amy. Yes, I feel the pressure, but I limit myself to encourage them and not projecting my expectations. Thank you so much, because you're going to feel the pressure for high standards. Some of us actually still feel we've not achieved what we wanted to achieve. And what's most likely to happen, we're going to project that, feeling unfulfilled, we're going to project it to our kids. And if we're feeling as if we're not doing enough, and I remember back in the day when you had to be a lawyer, a doctor, and there was just a few, careers that people knew. Today, you can really be anything and excel. And then there was also this notion where we said excelling is you get a job or a career where you're making a lot of money. That is not always true. You've seen people who are making a lot of money, are very successful in their careers, but they are far from happy or even feeling that they have fulfilled their life's dreams. So let's not be those parents. Let's reparent ourselves and be realistic. Stacey's gonna post the other questions because of time, and I want us to move into conclusion. Stacey, you can post the other questions. I'll just read them really quick. How important is it to you that your child follows in your footsteps academically or professionally? How open are you to allowing your child to pursue interests or goals that are different from what you expected of them? And the last one is, what do you believe is the most significant challenge in balancing your expectations with allowing your child to develop independently? Just ponder over those, and just as I go to the conclusion, then we can go over your comments. Just to go over some of the tips that we can or skills to help our children and for us to strike a balance. I think I want to emphasize on the reparenting ourselves, checking how we were parented and making sure that we pick the good and drop the bad. There are some good things that our parents did, and we certainly can continue doing those with our kids. We also need to recognize and challenge unrealistic expectations. Sometimes it's a mom setting unrealistic expectations to a child. As a father, please be involved in recognizing and challenging these unrealistic expectations. And it can even be from a teacher. And that does not mean that we're raising children who are not motivated, who are not pushed. Just ask yourself, is this realistic? My child is getting a D and they're being told within the next 2 weeks they must get an A. Is that realistic? Or is that something that maybe we need to work out a journey of how my child moves from a D to a C to a B and then to an A? So if they're in Form 1, maybe it's easier for you to say, why don't we get a tutor? Why don't I engage the teacher and have the right interventions so that you can set realistic expectations. We also need to embrace imperfection and mistakes, because some of the frustration from us parents is because we expect perfection from our kids when we ourselves are not perfect. So, let's just embrace imperfection and mistakes. We also need to reframe negative self-talk. And what does that look like? A child could say, I'll never make it in life. It could even be a parent who is saying, I'll never make it in life. And as I can see, my kids are all getting bad grades, will never make it. Or parents who tell their kids, you're a complete failure. You cannot be telling me you're playing football and other kids are in your class getting A's. There is also supporting and guiding the child through the process. If your child is getting a D, how are you supporting them to move towards a C and a B and A? Are you just saying, nimesema staki kuona D, I want to see an A? Are we paying attention to what the child is doing right? Affirming the child and praising them appropriately. Because if you can amplify what the child is doing right and also identify the process, say things like, I can see you're getting A's in English and it's because you've been practicing your comprehension on a daily basis. Is that something you'd want to try in the other subjects? So how do we praise appropriately but then affirm and also help the child in understanding the process? Take time to understand your child's perspective. What do they think? They think a YouTuber is so cool. They think a footballer is such a great thing to be. They think gaming is wonderful, and they think doing stuff online, posting YouTube videos. Explore that and see what the child's perspective is so that you're able to then help them set realistic expectations for themselves in what they can do. Share your personal experiences, and when I say share them, let's not share them in a way that we are criticizing the child. Like what I said, wewe unakuwa number last na mimi na mama yako we used to be number 1 in our class. Yeah? So because how you handled school and the grades you achieved, school today is not the same thing. Some of the school systems, even like CBC, are different. So let us share our personal experiences, but let's be careful on the impact they have on our children. Let's also learn from experiences. Some of us will admit the way we parented our firstborns is not how we are parenting our second and third and fourthborns. So let us learn from experiences. If you feel you are too hard on your firstborn, you can even take a minute, Nancy, and apologize. And let that experience teach you on how to better parent. The other thing is avoid imposing excessive or unrealistic expectations. And the last one is let's emphasize on the process. This way the child can realistically learn skills that will help them achieve. And because we don't want to set unrealistic expectations, which will bring burnout and stress Instead, we want to be realistic so that the child stays motivated and productive. As I conclude, I'd like to welcome those who have comments, questions, suggestions, or experiences they'd like to share. Just finishing up on let's avoid comparisons between ourselves or our children. Let's avoid comparisons between the neighbors' children, the cousins. Let us also realize that expectations can create more problems than they solve. So let's be careful on how we set expectations. Let's also focus on progress and not perfections. So unrealistic expectations do not leave room for changing circumstances, and they do not allow flexibility in our children's development. So let's align our expectations with reality, and that way we'll never be disappointed. I'd like to pause there, take questions, comments, reactions. You can also take a minute to join the EmpowerWiz community, where we share these parenting tips and we learn together. So we have about 10 minutes, which we can use to just share our experiences, ask questions, and explore this topic of striking a balance between parents and children, with a focus on creating realistic expectations for our children and supporting them, and not parenting from where we were parented, and allowing them to be the best versions of themselves. So if you want, you can just unmute and speak, because even I'm not sure how to raise the hand up. So we can have anyone who'd like to share or ask a question or speak on this topic. I know it's a wide topic, but we were able to scratch the surface, and I think we have those questions which will help us ponder on what kind of parents we are. Stacy, if I'm not seeing the questions and they are there, please help me.
No questions so far.
Okay. All right. You can unmute yourself and speak. Mary, I know your child is young. You can tell us something. I remember when my kids were young, and I kept thinking, oh my God, will we ever make it? They grow fast. So I'm really happy to see some young parents, Sylvia. I'm happy to even see some people here who don't have kids. Susan, you can share your experiences. I think as older parents, we also owe the younger parents to let them know that they'll make it. James, Grace, Gladys, Nancy, I will not forget what you said, that we need to reparent ourselves. Honestly, I think I've done a lot of that in the past couple of years, and I'm making good progress. And this EmpowerWiz conversation is really a lot about that. So let's hear Pearl, if you have something to say. Ray, Richard. It's a safe space. There is no judgment here. We are parents to be. We have young adults here, like Stacy, who maybe one time will remember these conversations, and hopefully they'll be helpful. Amy, Gilbert, I know you have a young one. Okay, we're giving it, we still have time, so you can unmute and speak. It can be a reaction, a question, a comment.
I think for me, I really I've loved this session. And my biggest takeaway here is just to reparent myself as I parent children. No more pressure. It's a delicate balance, really, doing this in this new age of parenting for us young parents. So my biggest thing and takeaway that I've taken here is just to do the inner work, because once you are healed and you heal from all those experiences of your parents parenting you, then you cannot parent the way you are parented. So I'm really thankful for this session. Thank you very much, Nora.
Thank you, Gilbert. Just as a young parent, please, we'd like to let you know that when we were young parents, we also were trying to figure it out. In fact, some of the things we look back, I remember stressing about matching outfits for my children when they were young. I look back now and I laugh because that was stressing me, that the socks don't match the bib, or the bib is now wet, yet I had matched everything. So, I mean, I would say as young parents, Gilbert, be gentle with yourself, be open to learning, and yes, do the inner work. Hylene has a question. How can we deal with a teenager who urinates on bed at night? By the way, to be honest, this is not this is a very common problem, and it's a wider topic. When you have children who wet their beds, a lot of times there's even biological reasons why maybe they have bladder issues, so you can have a doctor check them out. It could also be that the child is having nightmares or they are going through a stressful period. And by the way, bedwetting does not really have a timeline. You can't really say, oh, you're 15, you cannot be wetting your bed. And I'll give you an example. I went to boarding school when I was in class 4. So I must have been, is that 8, 9? And I remember most of us used to wet our beds, but we didn't even used to take our beddings outside. The reason I remember I was wetting my bed, I was very scared. And there was a lot of stressors. We didn't have water to shower. We used to be, caned a lot in boarding school. And there was a lot of things that were stressing us. So, Hylene, it's very important that you review the child. Have they always been wetting their bed? Did they just start? Is it happening at particular times? And I refuse to think that it's because they're consuming too much water. Of course, it's going to be a contributor, but a lot of times it's an inside experience that the child is having, or it could be biological. I wish I could be an expert and give you a perfect answer, but those are just some of the things that have come to mind, because that's something I also experienced when my children were young. And one of the things I learned is not to focus on it. For example, do not embarrass the child. So you need to have like a secret code. When they bedwet their bed, you could say something like, when they wake up in the morning, to come and say, I only tell you as the mom. Say something like, Mom, I need your help, or can I talk to you? Or give them what to do, like give them an extra set of bed sheets in their bedroom, give them a waterproof cover for their mattress. Please do not embarrass the child because they're wetting their bed. Support them, because it's not something they're doing to embarrass you. It is a challenge they're having, and none of us, even when you are 5 or 6 or 7, none of us would want to wet their bed. Be gentle with them. Eileen, I hope I was able to answer your question. I can see we're going to spend about 3 minutes. We are just coming up to the end of our session, and I'd like to take more comments, questions, reactions, anything you'd like to share on this topic. And I want to believe that most of us leave this conversation today checking ourselves on how we parent, wondering if we're parenting from where we were parented, wondering if our childhood experiences are playing, a higher percentage of how we're showing up as parents to our children, also exploring what our children are good in, and wondering how we can better support them. If nothing else, I want us to remember to reparent ourselves and to be deliberate and intentional parents as we set realistic expectations for our children.
Hi, Nora.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Mary.
Good. Yeah. So this is my first time attending, and you're doing such a good work. it's good to listen to the parents who've been there before us. Yeah, considering that I'm still a fresh mom. My two is only 3 years old. So yeah, I hope that we'll get to have many more of these sessions so that you can be able to learn. Yeah, so yeah, good job.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you for coming. I know it's quite a stretch. Susan has said something. This was a great session, superb insights. Most crucial is no undue pressure to the child or parents. Reparent ourselves, reassess how we show up for our children. Thank you, Susan, and I think she had to leave the meeting. So thank you, Mary, first for coming. We have these conversations every last Thursday of the month. By the way, if you have a topic.
Hi, Nora.
Hi, Richard.
Hi, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Or is it Merry Christmas almost?
Yeah, it's almost closer. How have you been? So I think this is a powerful platform. 1, 2, I resonate with the parent who mentioned something around reparenting. And closely connected to that is, as parents, are we man enough or woman enough to just say we're sorry whenever we go wrong? I mean, looking back when we were growing up, I don't think I ever had any time my parents tell me I'm sorry for making this kind of decision. So I think being bold enough to just say you're sorry that you took the wrong decision, and this is what they call it neo-parenting. Right. So yes, I'm very happy about this platform and looking forward to joining again. Thanks.
Wow, thank you so much, Lubira, and thanks for coming. Something you said that's so important, and I've actually asked myself many times. So I've taken a minute, I've been vulnerable to my teenagers, and I have apologized because I remember being upset that their toys were all over the house. And I remember walking in and saying, how many times have I said I do not want to see toys everywhere? Looking back, I should have played with the toys and maybe let them make a mess a little. So how many of us are being vulnerable and doing this neo-parenting and apologizing? By the way, there's no harm if you apologize later, like I'm doing now, because I now have time to look back and see how I parented, and my kids sometimes will laugh about it. They remind me and they say, "Oh, Mom, you've changed nowadays." And I say, "How have I changed?" And they say, "You're nicer, you're more flexible. Nowadays you let us, talk. You used to do all the talking." So I do apologize every so often when, we have these conversations. And now, of course, they're teenagers. They do stop me when I'm talking too much. They just say, "Mom, you need to hear me out." Yeah. So let's be vulnerable enough to say sorry to our parents.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Amy.
With this pressure, what do you do when it's coming from the child? It's not coming from the parents. For example, you say, "I want to get top student," and this is influenced by maybe attending the giving, and she doesn't get enough medals, so she's feeling like it's weighing her down, and she wants to be a top student. I speak to student, "I want to be a top student."
Right.
What exactly do you try to encourage them? Maybe have better insight.
Wow, that is a very interesting question. Yeah, the pressure is not coming from the parent. It's actually from the child. And as a parent, you're even feeling inadequate because you're saying, what is it that I'm not doing right? Because my child wants to walk on stage and be number one or get a prize. So first is to establish what are the child's strengths. Yeah. Today, a child who watches someone else get a math prize, but they're the best footballer, you have a chance as a parent to say, "You know what, Marcel? You are the best footballer in our estate. And I know they haven't had a football competition in school, but if they did, you would be the best footballer." So first I would say, let's affirm our children on what they're already good at. Number 2, that which they want. So they want to be the best math student. Do some research with the child and say, how about we start with you practicing math on a daily basis? Or how about we get a tutor for you to improve on your math? So walk the child through the process, do the research with them on winning strategies. And remember to focus on the process and the progress. So if the child was getting a B and the person who got the award had an A, if they're able to make that improvement from B to B plus, please remember to affirm the child and congratulate them on the good work they are doing. That way they are motivated to go further. For those of you with young children, keep encouraging them that one day the stage will be theirs. And that all of us walk our own journeys, and that's where the comparisons come in. You need to affirm your child to a place where they don't exactly need to compare themselves with others in a negative way, but they can use that prize winning as a motivator. So when you go home, say, oh, you said you want to be on stage next term? Okay, what do we need to do this holiday? And then employ those strategies, whether it's a tutor, whether it's practice, whether it's whatever it is that they need to do, whether it's a sport, a subject, music, and use that opportunity then to discover what the child wants to win in. Allow the child to know that every child will not be winning in everything. So there'll be the best math students, the best English students, the best music students, the best art students. So let's also ensure that we educate our children around not everybody can be good at everything. And that's the chance you have to share your story. That I wasn't the best math student, but I was the best art student. So you can also be something else. Amy, I hope that answers your question.
Yes,
Okay.
it does. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. It's 7:37. I beg that for those of us who are going to make dinner, you are welcome to join the Empower Wiz community on WhatsApp, where we share these parenting tips, and we are able to invite you to these webinars that we have every last Thursday of the month at this time. So every month we cover a topic that culminates into this webinar. And this month we've been covering striking a balance between parents and children, and how to create and help our children set realistic expectations and avoid setting unrealistic expectations for them. So thank you very much for coming. It was a wonderful, wonderful conversation, and I know most of us have taken a lot of insights from here. I want to appreciate my colleagues from ABSA who are able to join, my friends, my family, and all of you who we haven't met yet. Really, really appreciate you for being part of this Empower Wiz conversation. A lot of these recordings are on our YouTube channel. So if you're interested